wow, I was seeing this guy in college, like my first year of college. And, the dudes are always into hardcore and they go to the show, and there's a lot of machismo and stuff. And I remember we were just starting to see each other. And I played a Nick Cave record and he didn't like it. And that was over.
Yeah, that's a deal breaker,
that was
right?
the deal breaker. I was like, well, I'm not seeing you again. Yeah, it was like that for me.
Welcome to This Broken Mixtape, the podcast that rewinds and presses play on the soundtrack to your life. I'm Jeff Wu.
And I'm Justin Lee.
For more than a decade, Brooklyn singer-songwriter Shilpa Ray has been somewhat of a hidden gem of New York's rock scene. Her soulful jazzy vocals, juxtaposed against garage and punk rock riffs, conjures the work of Ella Fitzgerald, Blondie, the Cramps, and the New York Dolls, to name a few. We sat down with Shilpa to discuss her latest record, Door Girl, smuggling the CDs of the Velvet Underground and the Doors in between the pages of library books as a teenager, and her inspiration for writing the song Revelations of a Stamped Monkey.
This week on the show, we have special guest Shilpa Ray. Welcome to the show, Shilpa.
Thanks for having me.
So you guys are touring, you're doing a few dates this spring, and you guys were in Montreal last night and now playing Toronto at the Baby G.
Yes, yep.
So one thing I was wondering is, I know that previously you recorded it under different band names, Beat the Devil and Shilpa Ray and the Happy Hookers, which was like a great name. But more recently, the last two full-length albums, you just pretty much recorded just as a solo act under your name, obviously working with other people.
Yeah, unfortunately, me having band names brought me a lot of bad luck.
Oh, how so?
It just became a problem because I write all the songs, and I guess like throughout the years, people have very different views about how that's distributed and what's done about it. And I wanted more autonomy and control over what I was doing and the freedom to also change out my bandmates when I wanted to do that. It's touring now versus what it was before is so different because you don't have this a lot of money going into making a band happen, which was the historical format for rock and roll, where a record label comes along, sweeps you off your feet, and you have a manager, and there's all this money coming in. And now it's it's very DIY how you make money, and not everybody can do tours. I sculpted my life so I can live on the road for as long as I want. So I kind of have to roll with who can do that and who can't, and that's how I choose bandmates.
Right. So the guys that you're working with right now that are currently on tour with you, how did you choose these guys?
Well, Rich, my drummer, and Christian, my synth player, have been with me for about a year and a half or so, almost 2 years, I'd say. And we met through mutual friends. Turner's the bass player for this tour, and we've also met through mutual friends, and it's the same with Paul. It's like everybody who's a musician in New York just knows each other. We work out of the same practice spaces, we go to the same shows, so you kind of like start talking to people and they're like, are you available for this? And it's kind of fun. It's fun to take people and see what fits and what doesn't, and it also makes it calmer in terms of when people have to leave. It's not this big battle, it's like, cool, thank you for letting me know. And then you can find somebody else to play the parts as well. So.
Right. Okay. Your new record, Door Girl, it's a reference to your day job. I mean, I guess it's more of a night job, but your day job is you're a door girl at Pianos.
Yes.
Which, for our listeners who don't know, is a very popular music venue in Lower East Side of New York. So I'm wondering, with that, I mean, you, like, physically speaking, you don't look like the average door person, because it's usually like some, like, frat boy type and, like a big dude.
A big dude.
How do you, I'm wondering, how do you must have seen all kinds of people come in through those doors.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And, when you have people who have been drinking too much and are a little aggressive, I mean, what's your experience been like? Because you've been doing this for a while, yes?
Yeah. The bouncers, I work on the inside for the ticket process and also letting people into the club, and then you have the burly men on the outside, and you have some women on the outside too, and they're really tough as well. but they always say that nobody's as tough as me. I don't know. I just kind of roll with whatever people are giving me, and I don't really take my work home with me, you know what I mean? But it did inspire a lot.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching a massive amount of people coming in, and they're from all walks of life, and there's just so much material in that. There's so much to see in that, even though it seems at first to be a very boring, mundane job. You really can like observe a lot. It's good for people watching, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, people know you within at least in the New York music circle, they know you as a musician first and foremost, right? I'm imagining, especially the people that the patrons at pianos.
No, they don't.
No? Okay. So people don't know who you are.
No, they don't know who I am.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, because that's got to be, I was going to ask, like, just in terms of being on stage versus, like, you know, like, it's a huge difference there, and I was wondering what that was like.
I love it. I love the duality. I love it because it also keeps me firm to the ground. You know, it's like, I think I've definitely said this story before, but one of the most contrasted parts that I've gone through with working this job and also having to perform on stage was performing at Carnegie Hall with Andrew Bird. He asked me to sing on a couple songs with him, and I said, yeah, I mean, wow, I never thought I would get to perform at Carnegie Hall. And it was magical, and it was just unbelievable. And then the next day, I was kicking out a 22-year-old boy, you know, for being hostile at the bar,
Right.
and calling me a bitch, basically, and just pushing him out, you know, out of the door.
Wow.
And I was like, I guess this is just, I'm accepting that this is what my life is like.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
How did that come to be with Andrew Bird? Are you friends with him, or did you?
I got recommended through somebody he worked with,
Okay.
and he wanted a female vocalist based out of New York to do some local stuff, and one of the gigs was at Carnegie Hall, and I rehearsed and went into rehearsal, and we did that. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot from him, too.
Okay. Another huge musician you've worked with that you went on tour with not too long ago, Nick Cave. And I imagine you were a fan before going on tour with him.
Yeah, that's also something I never thought would happen in my life, but I've always been a really huge Bad Seeds fan, and that was definitely somebody I listened to as a teenager. I remember, I was seeing this guy in college, like my first year of college, and you know, the dudes are always into hardcore, and they go to the show, you know, and there's a lot of machismo and stuff. And I remember we were just starting to see each other, and I played a Nick Cave record, and he didn't like it, and that was over.
Yeah, that's a deal breaker,
That was
right?
the deal breaker. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not seeing you again. Yeah, it was like that for me. Yeah, I just didn't think that would ever happen in my lifetime, that I'd actually meet and become friends with this person. And now we're very good friends with each other. He's like family, you know.
That's awesome. What kind of things did you learn from him, just in terms of, you know, developing your artistry and?
To be more assertive,
Okay.
and to be more conscious of how I arrange music, and always stand my ground and not compromise. And that's something he told me like right off the bat when I first started working with him. And it did help, because it is really hard. I don't think people see women as arrangers or in any format part of the production part or process of music. And we're just sort of considered in a lot of ways to just run with emotions all the time. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
But it's insulting. And I think from him, hearing him say that to me, gave me a lot of confidence into like learning how to do that, and learning how to do it effectively. And so I've kind of stuck to my guns with that, at least for the last few records or last few recordings that I've done, and I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Another huge legend that you worked with, or actually should I say opened for a benefit show, Patti Smith.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
It came out of this organization that wanted to do a fundraiser, and she was part of a mentoring program, and she was mentoring a different musician, but they sort of asked us if we wanted to play this bill as well, and we said yeah. And it was fun. It was a good show. I worked with Lenny Kaye a little bit later than that too, and he's a sweetheart. I got too nervous to talk to Patti Smith.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And she's kind of shy and reserved too, and I don't like I don't really like invading people's spaces, so I kind of left her alone. But she's rad. I really respect her work a lot. And yeah, she's very cool.
So let's backtrack here and just talk about a little bit of like just your entry point into music, just as like a fan, as a listener. So if you can tell us, like, you know, just early, like in your life as a kid, what kind of stuff would be played around the house?
Wow, there's a lot of memories. My parents listened to a lot of Indian music and a lot of Bollywood music from the 60s, 70s. And that was ingrained in me. My father also went through a short time period of listening to classic rock and the oldies.
Okay.
This was when I was very, very young. I mean, later on in my childhood, he banned American music from the house. So I have memories of listening to the hook of Mother's Little Helper for the first time and having that guitar riff rotating in my mind. You know, things like that. So I knew, like, that was something that I liked a lot, enjoyed. My mother caught me singing when I was, like, around that age, just hanging out, playing in the backyard, and thought it would be a great idea to put me into vocal training. I didn't think that was a great idea at the time.
How old were you?
I was 6 when I started.
Okay.
It was really intense. It wasn't like, we had to run scales and stuff. Could you imagine a 6-year-old like having to have that much discipline? It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know or understand the complexity of the language, even though I could speak conversational Bengali and stuff. There's just all this music being said in Sanskrit and in Hindi, and I was completely out of my element. But somehow mechanically did it, you know?
So did you hate it when you were doing it? Or
Yeah, I really did. I really hated it. And then did it for 11 years and quit as a teenager. And then one day I took my first hit of ecstasy. Yes, I'm serious. It's like, and then I just started singing in the park, and my friend looked at me and she was like, "You need to do this for a living." So I slowly started to come, you know.
And since like the like sort of Western music was banned in your household, I mean, how early were you when you started seeking out like sort of secular music?
I was in middle school, and my sister and I had this scheme of going to the public library and hiding CDs in books that my parents would approve of, inside like the pages and stuff. And she would bring home like Depeche Mode, Eurythmics, and hip hop, or like, and old R&B and things like that. And I would bring home things like The Doors or the Velvet Underground, and you know, just discovering all this stuff. And we'd learn about American music because, you know, when you grow up here, you want to kind of understand what your surroundings are, and we just kind of tried however we could to like get it, and it was library was our source for that. So.
I know Velvet Ground in particular had a huge impact on you. What was it about their music that you gravitated towards?
It was the first time that I felt that I could also write and play. You know, it had that kind of inviting nature, like anything goes. You can write a 2-chord song and get away with it, and it sounds amazing.
Right.
And also the lyrics. I mean, those stories, even written, and it's just, if it was written and didn't have music against it, anyone could understand what he's saying. And it reminded me of a lot of people in the East Coast, like their behaviors and stuff. Even though he was talking about speed freaks and everything like that, people are really uptight in the Northeast. It's like it has that edge to it. And I completely understood what he was saying. And I think that was what turned me on to that music.
I'm always wondered vocally, like how you sort of developed your sound, because you definitely have like this sort of, your singing vocals are like very much like sort of a jazzy sort of influence. And, you know, like within rock and roll, that's kind of an unconventional, you know, I'm sure there are like vocalists out there that have that, but you know, it's like this great juxtaposition between like that and like really loud guitars. And so how did you sort of develop that vocal style? Was it just based on what you're listening to, or?
Yeah, I mean, that also comes from classical Indian music because it's really drony.
Okay.
So you have to extend a lot of the phrases out. So a lot of it has to do with that, too. And I've been told when I work on session to always cut my phrase.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, which is, I think is really interesting. So it's like, no, sing it this way, and this is how you enunciate. And I would have to change my style. And I loved learning how to do that, you know. But my natural style, I think, is long like that because of the classical training in Indian music.
Yeah. At what age did you decide this is what I really want to do professionally?
Wow. Probably my early 20s. This was when I really wanted to do it because I just made myself go to open mics and would haul my harmonium around. And it's like, you don't do that stuff unless you want it, you know. So I did that, and I started from there, and, you know, writing a couple songs turned into writing lots of songs, turned into a band, it gradually grew. So, yeah, I think that's when it kind of hit me that it's something I wanted to do.
And when you brought it the news to your parents and just told them this is what I want to do, like, were they supportive?
No.
Right.
No, I love my parents, but they were still not supportive. I kind of had to do my thing, show up when they need me to, and then they kind of engage with the parts of me that they're comfortable with.
Okay. Have they seen you perform, though?
No.
Oh, they've never performed? Wow.
No. I don't think my mother's ever been to a bar.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But how about just, like, playing in, say, their home? Or have you ever done just, like, a sort of...
Oh, I mean, they saw me perform when I was doing classical Indian music.
Right.
But
just none of your current music? Okay, wow.
No, they don't know what it sounds like or anything.
Do you think they have this sort of strange idea of what you do versus the reality? Because I don't know. I feel like they would appreciate just in terms of, like, melody and, like, just the basic, sort of elements of music.
My cousins love it, and they follow, you know. But I don't know, like, there is some kind of intensity about that to them that they don't really want to explore. And I'm okay with that.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's fine with me. Because we have a different relationship, so
Sure.
it is the way it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk specifically about the song on the new album, Revelations of a Stamp Monkey. I know it talks about your experience learning about Eric Gardner's death by the NYPD police. And you were, at the time when you learned about it, you were at a laundromat that was just down the street from where it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Can you tell us
crazy.
about that and, like, just sort of processing it and sort of that weird experience you had that day?
Yeah, that whole time period was very intense. And I was just doing my laundry, and the lady that owns the laundromat by my place, just has the news on all the time. I'm looking, and the footage is there, and I'm basically watching a man die. And I just couldn't believe it. And then you walk outside, and life is normal. And it's just the contrast between the two. It was very hard for me to accept, because now it's like okay to see that. It's okay to see a man getting murdered on TV, but you can't really be political or talk about it or, like, ruin someone's day over it for some odd reason. It blew my mind. In addition to that experience, when the 2 cops got shot during the protest marches, that was another time that I was actually down the street from the subway station that had happened. And I remember seeing the yellow tape being put down and not knowing what was going on, and then finding out about it at a show, but then no one really cared because we were all busy snorting lines in the bathroom. So that didn't make sense to me either, because it's interesting how, like, punk scenes or rock scenes are supposed to be so progressive. But to me, I've always just noticed the hedonism of it, and nobody really wants to talk about what's actually going on.
Yeah.
You know? So I was kind of commenting on that too, because I always expected music to kind of change the way people live and think, and I'm just watching these zombies just kind of do a daily routine while something major is happening. And that also bothered me too.
Yeah. Would you say this record is, like, a little bit more political than your previous efforts? Or I mean, you've always been political to a certain extent, but
I don't consider myself political as much as I consider myself somebody who's very dissatisfied with my surroundings.
Okay.
I think with considering yourself political means you work for an agenda, like there you have a very staunch agenda, and you work in form of society, what the societal acceptance is of working that, you know. And I have run into some problems with that because at the end of the day, I'm a musician, and that takes a lot of time. I'm very aware of my surroundings, and I will say what I don't like, and I'm not afraid of that. But I could never know what to do in terms of like how to work the system to get things changed. I don't know that. I'm sure there are like good people in politics that do, even though we always kind of see the other parts of it. You know?
You put out I think it was like just a 7-inch, a single, or maybe there was 2 songs on it recently, and one of the sides had a cover of Prince's When Doves Cry.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine like a lot of people, you're a huge Prince fan.
Oh, yeah.
How did you decide on selecting, because, you know, he's got one of the most massive, incredible catalogs ever. Why When Doves Cry? What was that about that particular song?
It sounded the closest to something I could pull off.
Okay. But your take on it is very different and unique. Like, I love your cover of it.
I could hear some, like, within the chord structure and how some of the phrasing was done on the original, that I could tailor it to my own voice. Also, I was working with another singer on that as well. Her name is Diva Mahal. And we had made a list of stuff that we could possibly do. Okay. And that was the one song that we both agreed on. So that's the one we did.
Okay. Earlier, you were talking about how Nick Cave is a deal breaker when it comes to, you know, you're a partner not, you know, getting that particular music. Who else would you say, what other artists or bands are like deal breakers?
There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot.
Give us a few
it's just so funny because I shouldn't be like that, you know.
I get it though.
I mean, people tolerate people's music choices, and they can still be in a functional relationship.
Sure.
Oh my God, I remember this one time I was abroad with this dude, and I was washing dishes to In Excess, and he didn't like In Excess.
What?
And I was just kind of like, it took me a while, but the seed was planted that it was not gonna work out. Like, that was the beginning of the end for me, you know?
No, I get that. The thing is that people that don't like In Excess only really know like a few isolated songs, I feel like. And if they just sat down and listened to maybe like just 2 of their albums at least, they would understand why they're so phenomenal.
That band is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's also a lot of people don't like the strong front man with the backing band.
Sure.
Because I have the same issue with the Doors. I'm a huge Doors fan, but a lot of people don't like the Doors because they don't like the Jim Morrison persona. But I don't see it like that. I don't hear it like that. I hear an amazing band that just works together in this really unique way, and I could listen to their records front to back. You know? So, yeah, The Doors is another one I get into massive arguments about. Yeah, I was hanging out with some dude, and he liked Steve Miller, but didn't like The Doors. And then I couldn't understand, like, how that could happen.
Yeah. Has it ever been the case where you find out much later in the relationship, let's say you're like a year down the line, things are going well, and then you find out that they don't like The Doors or they don't like In Excess?
You know, oh wow, I don't think I've been in a relationship long enough to have that happen.
Okay, fair. So obviously it is a very important. Music compatibility is pretty important to you.
I know, but it's not the criteria you're supposed to look for.
But I know where you're coming from, really. I used to, I still am like that to a certain extent, but I used to really be like that.
Can you cite something?
This is, I don't even think this is a music snob thing. I think this is anyone, but I was dating this girl, and she, you know, whenever we're driving in her car, she would only play boy band music. Oh, this is a fully grown woman. Like at the time I was like maybe 30 and she was 29, 28.
Yeah.
And this is long after, and she would play the same 3 albums, like Backstreet Boys, you know, Spice Girls, and like one other one. And I was like, you know, there's like music that even if you're going to listen to boy band stuff, like I didn't understand why it had to be those 3 albums. So I thought that was weird. I took her to a festival, and Broken Social Scene was curating that festival. And the whole time, there's like 5 bands playing that day. Dinosaur Jr., like a great lineup. And she was on the lawn the whole time just reading like a woman's magazine.
Oh, that's a joke.
And I was like, this can't work.
That's not
it
going to
upset
work.
me deeply.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it is important.
Yeah. To me, it's like...
It's how you spend your time.
Yeah, it's like food, though. If you're...
Yeah.
I mean, you can't... A carnivore and a vegan can't really... I mean, I'm sure there are cases of that.
I've tried that.
Yeah.
It is kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Because it's like a daily thing, right? You're going to listen to music every day. Obviously, you're going to eat every day. And you want to ideally share, and it has to be somewhat compatible with the other person. So, yeah. So this new album, I know that it came out last year. So what are you working on right now? Is it? Are you still going to be recording as a solo artist from this point on, or?
I have a couple projects where I'm collaborating, which I can't mention what they are yet because I don't know if the other artists would be happy about that.
Okay.
But I'm also writing for a new record. I don't know how long this process is going to take. It's always really wild to look at a blank canvas because I throw out a lot of material before I think I'm onto something, So my process is like, it takes me a good amount of time before I start striking gold.
How many songs do you normally sort of write in preparation for an album, and then eventually,
the whole thing comes out?
Yeah.
I have to get into at least 6 when I know I'm like, okay, the next 4 are going to be really easy to write because I already know like where I'm going.
One other thing I want to ask you actually was that I know that you live really close to the BQE. Is it the BQE?
Oh, yeah.
And you're saying in some interviews that you can't really like sleep unless there's construction, like loud city noises.
Yeah.
So it's like your worst nightmare just camping, like being in the middle of
It kind
nowhere?
of freaks me out.
Yeah.
I can camp, I do it, but it is kind of weird. You don't hear anything, and all of a sudden you're alone with your own thoughts, and that's really scary.
And how does that lend itself to your songwriting process? I'm wondering.
It's so weird. Everyone's always like, so you're going to go away when you write the next record? I've written every piece of music in New York City.
Okay.
I never leave. I weave it through working jobs. I weave it through going to practice. It's just, it's integrated into my life. I never just, check out and go somewhere remote to write. I don't know why.
So it helps you.
I think the push is there. The franticness is there. So I think that also has influenced my writing style because everything is just so quick, the way it's like said and done.
Right.
So, yeah.
So this is almost time for us, but I'm just wondering before we go, do you hear Yanni or do you hear Laurel? I don't know if you heard this whole thing earlier this week. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay.
I've been on the road.
Fair enough.
What is it about?
I'm going to have to play you the audio clip, but
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just wondering as a musician, because I think like this thing, do you remember that dress a few years ago where people were like, it's either blue and white or gold and white? I don't know if you remember that.
Blue and black,
Blue and black.
gold and white.
Yeah.
Wow, it's all about perception.
It was just one,
Oh.
And this is more like the audio version of that. So
wow.
Let me just find you the clip really quickly. Because from what I've heard, higher frequencies, as you get older, apparently older people can't hear them as well. And in this clip, it's a recording of a recording. So the recording isn't great. So what a lot of people automatically hear is Laurel. And then there's other people who hear the higher frequency and it sounds like Yanni to them.
Oh, okay.
So I'll play this for you really quick.
I hear Yanni.
I do too. What do you hear, Jeff?
Laurel.
See?
Wow.
These guys, most of the people I talk to are like Laurel. But it's a very high frequency. It's like Yanni.
Wow, yeah, right? I hear that.
But then the more I listen to it, and it depends if you hear it on headphones or versus like a smartphone speaker. But I do now start hearing both Yanni and Laurel. I can hear like the Laurel.
I can't hear the
Laurel part is like lower. It's like Laurel. Yeah. Laurel.
Oh, wow.
But this is what people have been talking about all week.
Wow.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's a
There's a lot
polarizing
going on
debate.
in Canada, isn't there?
No, this is like international.
Oh,
so,
it's international.
Worldwide, yeah.
Okay.
But that's fair.
Okay.
I mean, compared to the American
something
climate right
crazy
now.
happened to me today, which is I think it's very Canadian. Is hanging out with a raccoon at a bar.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, that's never
It
happened
was
to
pretty
me.
wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I was walking up the street and I saw it coming down. And I was like, I guess they have raccoons here. And then I went to this bar to have a drink before I was loading in equipment, and the raccoon just came in and was just like, "Hey," and I was like, I guess that's what it's like here. I don't know.
That's just a normal day in Toronto.
Yeah,
Just sat on the bar and you guys shared
just
drinks.
like, oh, you're having a whiskey? I think I'll have the same.
Yeah, it's been a rough day.
I was like, come out to the show later.
Well,
But-
what are your like I guess sort of observations between the differences between like Americans and Canadians? I mean, we always get this thing. I think there's a stereotype that Canadians are extra polite, and I don't really agree with that. I feel like whenever I travel to the States, I find Americans really polite, like even more so than Canadians in many countries or many cities.
I think the politeness is you're not as loud,
Okay.
and you don't gesture as much,
Right.
which is a very American thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if a New Yorker is yelling at you, it's just because that's what we do. But it's not like we're angry.
Right.
It's
right.
just the way we come off, so people think it's rude. Also, I don't know what it is. I feel like when I visit Canadian cities, you've retained the old structures better, and it seems like classes are more mixed. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Whereas in America,
that
it's
might be true.
really
Yeah.
segregated. It's like
Yeah.
if you're in a rich part of a neighborhood in the States, that's just that,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to see anything else.
Right. Right.
And here it seems like everyone gets to hang out
Yeah.
wherever, which I like
Mm-hmm.
personally. I like to see everybody. I don't really like the whole, stay off the lawn of my mansion kind of
Right,
attitude, and that's very American. America hides its poverty.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of San Francisco in particular. I remember being there like a few years ago, and like one block, it's like very posh, and then you turn the corner, and it just seems like, definitely like drugs, a lot of crime. So it depends what city you're in, I think, as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
okay, well, I think that's all the time we have. But
Cool.
thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
and we're looking forward to your show tonight.
Yeah, I can't wait to play. It should be a lot of fun.
Right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Season 2, Episode 5 of This Broken Mixtape featuring singer-songwriter Shilpa Ray. Visit thisbrokenmixtape.com to check out this episode's Spotify playlist. There you'll also find our past interviews and custom illustrations for each show. However you're tuning in today, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and share our podcast so we can find more listeners. That would really help us out a lot. If you have any comments, feedback, or ideas for guests, feel free to drop us a line through our website, Instagram, or Twitter. Join us next week where our special guest is indie folk rock singer and composer Jonas Benetta. Thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. Cheers.